Hello everyone, I'm Sue Finlay Williams, and today I'll be talking with the PPPC's presidential candidate, Mr. Irfan Ali. We'll be talking about the social sector. Now, we know we've got young people looking for jobs. We have a healthcare system needing revamping. We have the education sector, young people needing a curriculum review and the best opportunity at quality education. And I really want to address some of these issues today with Mr. Ali. Mr. Ali, welcome to the program. I want you to tell me, or our viewers, what is your heart for Guyana going forward? What is your vision? What is it you want to see change in this beautiful country? And perhaps highlight some of your plans.
So, thank you very much. And it's always a pleasure for me to share my vision and the vision of the PPP Civic to our Guyanese brothers and sisters. Today you've asked me some specific questions, and I would like to capture this as social well-being, the well-being and welfare of our people. How do we ensure that our elderly, women, children, youths, they're all protected, they all feel as if the system is working for them. And this is something that is important when we look at the social sector. We have to ensure that people believe in the system, they believe the system is working for them, they believe that the system gives them the best opportunity that they can have in life. Now let us examine the system as it is now, and you will see that the manifestation of how the system is not working for our Guyanese brothers and sisters is showing up in different sectors and in different ways. For example, if we can start with the healthcare system, we have constant and consistently been hearing of drug shortages, medical supply shortages, long lines at the hospitals, a broken regional system. We have young doctors who are trained and invested in leaving the public sector. And we have to examine why we are having these difficulties. There were tremendous changes and reforms in the health system that brought us to a state that we were supposed to take off. So what we have is a situation where the primary system, the primary healthcare system, is not working for the people. The people don't believe in the system. They don't believe the system is delivering the best type of healthcare for them. And at the same time, we have a huge gap between what our future healthcare should be giving our people as against what we have now. So the future healthcare has to deliver not only quality healthcare, but higher levels of healthcare. But whilst we're thinking about that in the future, the existing healthcare system is in shambles. So we have to fix this. We have to ensure, and this is what my government will do, this is what I will do. I would ensure that we have health sector reforms that look at issues of accountability, transparency, that fix the regional healthcare system. We have to invest heavily in the infrastructure and in the regional system. We have to ensure that they are properly staffed. You know, we had this program of sending 1,000 young Guyanese to become doctors trained in Cuba. We have to ensure that we give them the best facilities with the incentives and the type of work environment that they would want to stay in the system. We can't force these young people to be in a system that is old, the fixed establishment, as against a young person who would want to be in a contractual obligation on contract with the healthcare system. Our aim is to ensure that the healthcare system has the human resource capacity that will ensure the quality healthcare is delivered. So the government has a responsibility to create that enabling environment in the healthcare system. Definitely over the years you've been hearing about procurement fraud in the purchase of drugs. We've been hearing about a system that has serious leaks in terms of the delivery of drugs to people, whether they're actually getting the drugs, severe shortages of drugs. We have a situation where resources budgeted are returned in the last month of the year, and the people don't get the benefit of those resources because of a system that does not work. So my government, first of all, would focus on fixing this system, fixing the primary healthcare system so that our people can benefit from top primary healthcare. Then we have to ensure that we have preventative medicine. We have to invest in educating our population in preventative methods, avoiding certain diseases, diabetes, and these things. If we adjust our lifestyle, we can beat these things. We have rising population that is affected by cancer. We have to ensure that we can not only build a facility, that we staff the facility, and we have the supplies in those facilities, that we can give basic care to these patients who require care, and that, you know, their prospects of living is cut short because of unavailability of drugs or unavailability of the service. And we will have resources that will allow us to do this, to fix the primary healthcare system, to ensure that we match the human resource requirement of the healthcare system with what we are producing. And also, on the other hand, we have to work on an aggressive plan that will take us to a higher level of healthcare. The specialty hospital, we have to bring that back on stream. But we can't only focus on the specialty hospital. We have to focus, as I said, on the existing issues, fixing the existing issues, while we invest in these large initiatives. We also have to look at, and these are things that we'll be doing. We'll be looking at ways in which we can partner with the private sector, ways in which the government can provide subsidies and incentives so we can have more investment in private healthcare at a reduced cost, that you can have more efficiency in the delivery of healthcare services from private institutions, but at a reduced cost. We're also looking at building a scenario where healthcare and health services, including health education, would become an important part of the economic makeup of our country. Because if we invest heavily from the high end, which is the getting us to first world state, whilst we fix the system, so it's two parallel approach to the healthcare system, then we can have healthcare as an export-oriented service that is earning us resources. Mm-hmm. And we have many of our Guyanese brothers and sisters who are seeking healthcare services in Trinidad and Tobago. I know a lot of them who goes there. We had set up the ophthalmology center in Berbice, but that was closed. We have to invest in these state-of-the-art facilities that would look at health in a holistic way for us here, and also as a potential for export earnings. This brings me to the issue, and of course, when we look at healthcare, we have to ensure that healthcare is accessible to all. We can't only look at improving healthcare in the city or improving healthcare in the urban centers. We have to look at improving healthcare and access to healthcare for the hinterland, for our Amerindian brothers and sisters. They have a totally different need. When you go out there and you talk to them, they get their medication sometimes 6 months after it is needed, and by the time it's there, it's close to expiration. We have to build a system that will ensure accountability and traceability. We have to hold people accountable to the delivery of healthcare. We have to invest in training more medical personnel in these areas. We have to find talent within these regions, and there are a lot of talents within the region, and invest in them so that they can have at least the basic health care. And if we develop the system that I am proposing, that is with the use of ICT, then we can have, in India, they have a massive health network system, but they use ICT to help in the in patient care. So you have maybe a junior doctor you may have in one of the outlying area, but that doctor can communicate with specialists through online with use of ICT and get specialist advice in terms of care. And then we have to look at the transportation, especially for our Amerindian brothers and sisters, improve Medivac system and improve ambulance system. These are things that are essential in any growing and developing country. And these are things that we have to fix, we must fix, and I will fix. And this will be primary focus of my government. We also have to ensure that our elderly don't have to go and line up to wait for their monthly medical supplies. That they have, that there's a system in place that gives them ease in terms of uplifting their medication, in terms of clinics. And a lot of the problem is because, as I said earlier, the regional systems are not working. So people are leaving Lenore Diagnostic Center, and they're coming all the way to Georgetown to pick up medical supplies or to see a doctor, because the system is broken. And that is what we have to fix. And it calls for investment, it calls for planning, it calls for human resources, and it calls for the will to ensure that there is accountability at all levels of the healthcare system. Education, too, is another important area that we have to ensure we work from two parallels, as you rightfully said. We have a lot of young people who are dropping out of school. This has been increasing. And we have a lot of young people who are technical oriented. So we have to ensure that our technical institute, first of all, we have to expand TechVoc training. And we have to make TechVoc more mainstream. So our country is moving in an economic trajectory that will require a lot of technical skills in the various sectors, not only in the oil and gas sector, but downstream sectors, in whether it's agro-processing, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's specialized welding, whether it's mechanical services, these electrical services. These are things that will have great demand in the future, fields that will have great demand in the future. So we have to ensure that our technical vocational education is streamlined and geared towards producing this type of technical output. Let me give you an example. We have a situation now where our drivers who are doing executive driving for the oil and gas sector, they may not get a job because they don't have the compliance. I'm just giving you one example. And that compliance is basic training in force response, first aid, and so on. So at every single level, we have to ensure that our the Guyanese population is equipped to compete, to ensure that if the oil and gas sector requires a specific certification for our welders, that we, through our TechVoc system, we can produce that certification. So when they come out, they are coming out not only with a technical training, but with a necessary certification that will enable them to function in the sector that they are going. So we have to link this. We have to link the output of the TechVoc system. Then we have to expand TechVoc. We have the hinterland communities, tremendous talent, lots of young people, but no access to technical education. So when a young person in the hinterland or the riverine area drop out of school, or if they are more technical oriented, then most times that's the end of their educational pathway. So we have to ensure that a study is completed, and this will be done very quickly, maybe in the first 6 months, to realign or align the output of technical education and education on the whole to the economic requirement. We have to find the gaps, and we have to design programs that are going to enable us to fill those gaps. We also have to look at using our technical education and our TechVoc system to attract students from other jurisdictions. And that would raise the bar. It would raise the, a lot of people would rather say I go to a technical institute in the United States as against a technical institute in Guyana. It's all about raising the bar, and it's goodwill, In education, business is also goodwill. And access to education is also a very important part of my platform. And I've already made public that we want 20,000 Guyanese having access now to online university education. And this will come through the investment in ICT. You have hundreds and maybe of teachers and hundreds of nurses, hundreds of persons in the medical field, young people I'm talking about, who would like to do a degree in pharmacy, a degree in education, or a diploma in education. But they can't, because they're working in the hinterland, they're working in the riverine areas, you're working from 6 to 5, And so there is no opportunity for them to get to university. What we have seen over the years is that those who can afford it are moving towards distance and online education through private institutions. So as we support that, we have to ensure that the government provides a platform that would give all Guyanese that opportunity, that equal opportunity to access this education. You hear many stories across Guyana of persons who never had an opportunity. Some of the persons who might be in the mid-40s or 50s never had an opportunity because of the economic scenario of their families at that time. And technical online education, distance education gives us this opportunity to capture that wider segment of the population. So getting persons trained, getting persons reaching their educational goals and fulfilling their academic goals.
I'm personally excited about that because I myself am looking into furthering my studies, but I'm a new mom, I'm working, so I can't go do. So I'm really looking forward to that exciting stuff. What plans do you have in terms of improving primary education? Let's start from early childhood education, perhaps, all the way up to secondary. How do you see that changing under your leadership?
Well, first of all, we have to relook at our curriculum. And I say this because if we are to be competitive, we have to train our citizens to be competitive in the future. One of my greatest regrets in secondary education is that I did not pursue Spanish or a second language. It's very difficult to do it after. So we have to look at where our country is heading, our strategic partners, where the opportunities will be for our citizens. And we have to also look at what is happening in a geopolitical way in our region. And then we have to decide, look, Suriname has an excellent program in terms of languages. And we have to gear our education system to meet this changing requirement, global requirement, changing regional requirement, and ensure that from very early level, from the primary level, our educational system is geared to producing not only producing students, but producing persons who are trained to meet the expectation of not only Guyana, but the expectation of the global environment in which they'll be operating in. So we have to relook at the curriculum. We have to look at changes that are necessary to make our people competitive and to keep them competitive. When you speak to a lot of parents, children go through a lot very young for this common entrance. So managing expectation, ensuring that the common entrance exams is not looked at as separating our children in the future, separating those who go to the top 5 school and the rest of the children, and then those who don't get into secondary school. Now we have to look at it as a system that allows us to target different segments of our population going forward. If we have students who may not have made it, but they are technically good, so the system must be able to identify this for us so that we can, at a very early stage, invest in our human potential and capital for the future by understanding what is happening at that level, and not only move ahead with those who made it to a certain level, and then we forget about those who are left behind. So those are things, and we have to incorporate technical education in a more serious way at the secondary level. We have to also ensure that we have a system that allows us to track school dropouts. If persons drop out of school, the system must be able to help us to find those students, to give counseling where necessary, and to redirect them into maybe areas that they are more comfortable or areas that they see greater potential for themselves in the future. We also have to look at the vulnerable groups. We have kids who don't go to school, and I've seen this around the country because they don't have access to uniform. They don't have access to transportation costs, the cost of education, textbooks, transportation, uniform, extra lessons, is inhibitive sometimes on families, and in some ways it's discriminatory, because you have a situation where some children cannot afford it, and they feel as if they are at a different level than children who can afford it. So the government must be able to put safety nets, put systems in place that would address these issues that sometimes the population look at as soft issues. But these are really the hard issues that affect children psychologically, that affects their performance. So we have to ensure that we fix this. And the $10,000 Because We Care grant may seem as a small sum, but we have to look at not only reinstating this, but ensure we increase it and it gets to targeted groups, especially who are vulnerable and who are most affected. Then we have to look at our hinterland communities. How is it that we ensure that they're not only the level of education and the infrastructure is there, but ensuring that they have access. You have children sometimes that walk for 2-3 hours before they get to school. Now, that may be necessary because the population segments are so small that it's not feasible to have a school for 10 children or 5 children. But then we have to find ways in which we can reduce the burden on the children, the transportation issues, whether we can have in some areas where you have many satellite villages, they look at dorms to have dormitories built that can facilitate the children and their parents. So these are things that I'm looking at. These are things that you will see in my manifesto. You will see issues of the use of technology, ICT. You will also see that I'm looking at education as an export-oriented service. That's something that can earn us great resources in the future. Look at Grenada and St. George's University. But for that, we have to ensure that we work on different parallels. We have to look at the areas that we are best in. We can have the best Center for Biodiversity Studies. We can have the best Center for Environmental Studies. We can have the best sector for oil and gas. Why is it that we must send our human potential away to study oil and gas? We have to provide the incentive, now that we're going to be a big player in the industry, to have those institutions maybe establish themselves here and become a hub and have students from around the region and beyond coming here as a hub, because then it's linked to economic benefits.
Tourism.
Exactly. So these are things. Then we have to look at women as a vulnerable group. I know women now are outperforming men at the university, and that's an issue we have to address in the future too, to ensure that men are not left behind. But we have to ensure that the system works for women just as it would work for men. And this is a complaint sometimes you get, and we have to fix that. And we have to ensure also that when we look at technical education and women may be dropping out of school, sometimes you only think, sometimes our brain is trained to think only men are dropping out. But if we have female dropouts, they may have a different inclination, whether it's in tourism and hospitality management, whether it's in eco services or catering, and these are things. So we have to link that to an entrepreneurial development program. We have to link that to a program that not only trains them in entrepreneurial skills, but the skills that can help them to be reoriented into a business opportunity, and then help them to get access to financing, access to low-cost financing, grant. Everything has to be linked. The education sector cannot operate as a standalone. Same with the health sector. It has to be linked into the wider, so it has to be an integrated system that governs social welfare and well-being of our people. Our pensioners are also suffering. Some regions you go to, the pensioners would go now to the post office and the money is not there. They have to wait until the next day. And they sit for hours in Region 1. In Region 1, it's even worse because The pensioners there are spending half the pension sometimes in accommodation and traveling to receive the pension.
Yes.
So we have to look at not only increasing pensioners' pension, old age pension, but look at ways in which we can make it easier for them. Ensure that other social benefits and social programs are developed that would improve their welfare and well-being, that would give them a more comfortable life, that would give them greater ease in their old age. And that has to do with access to health care, that has to do with access to social services, that has to do with community-oriented projects that makes them feel as if they still have value. They're part of society. These are things that we may think are soft things, but these are things that are important to the elderly. Another important thing that we have to address for the elderly, and our manifesto will be looking at this, is issues of transportation. And this is something that is affecting our pensioners and elderly. So I would say that the education and housing, not only are we going to create the 50,000 house lots, but I want to assure all Guyanese that the 25,000 applicants who are there, that all of them without exception will be serviced. All of them will be catered for in the program. We have to attract private investment in the program. The government will be investing heavily in housing, but we also have to link the housing sector with a economic output, right? We can't create only blank communities. We have to create communities that are integrated socially and economically into the welfare and well-being of our country and our people. That is why when we were building ECHLS, ECHLS had segments that looked at all of this. That is why you have a lot of the people in ECHLS work in ECHLS because of the industrial. You have that experience?
I live in ECHLS.
Right.
So yes, of course, yes.
Right. So and when we are looking at housing, housing is not only about providing roof or providing land. Housing is a holistic. You have to look at a holistic solution that creates equity, that creates the environment in which a family can prosper and foster community engagement, community involvement. It has to create an environment in which persons see housing as a means of improving their economic well-being, improving the welfare of their family, improving the future prospects for their families. The greatest thing, and I've worked hard in the housing sector, the greatest joy I see on any family face, even the young professionals, with the specific schemes for them. So we'll have partnership with nurses, clerical workers, partnership with the private sector, with banks, young professionals, partnership with the vulnerable groups, partnership. We'll have a number of partnership programs in the housing sector that would ensure that all our people, that ensure the entire population benefit from the deliverables of the housing sector. It's not only about creating this 50,000 houses. That's the easy part. The part that we're going to put flesh on, and you're going to see in the manifesto, is how we're going to link that to the livelihood improvement, to the improvement of life, to the enhancement of communities, and the improvement of welfare in our country.
No, you have, your vision is big and your heart is big, but I wish I can sit here, we can talk a little longer. However, we have run out of time. We've come to the end. I want to thank you so much for your time. So you've been able to hear from the heart of the PPC's presidential candidate, Mr. Irfaan Ali, of his dreams for our country. And I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you so much.
I hope we can do this again, because the social sector is a huge sector. And we have to spend time, because sometimes we look at this as softer issues, but it's really the hard issues that affect the lives of people.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and it affects, you see, these are things that affect the lives of people. This is what people face on a day-to-day basis. This is the reality of life in our country, and we have to be able to address these things. And my government will be addressing it in the interests of our people. Thank you.